I do think that having really hard times does create a pretty good contrast to light times too. So I think that, I think it's just like the intensity of living, I think has helped kind of show the beauty of life and help give me a little bit more gratitude for it. Not like anything that I've ever gone through has been so hard as what other people have been through, in their life. I haven't had to fight a war, or anything like that. I think also remembering that all of these things are essentially self-inflicted, like I started the business, my wife and I chose to have a family. Like these are choices that I made, and they're good choices, and owning them and not feeling like things happen to me.
Welcome to Elevate Utah. I'm Court Brady. Today we have Jeff Handy on the podcast, and this has been a long time coming because I have memories of us running through the hills of Alta High School together as sophomores, play basketball together. So this is cool that we get to do a podcast 15 years later.
I think one of the cooler things about getting into my 30s has been looking around and seeing friends of mine grow up and be incredible, successful leaders in their families and their communities and business. And I mean, it doesn't get better than you right here. I mean, seriously, what you've been able to do with limited amount of time you've had on this earth has been really amazing. And I'm kind of grateful that I've, from the stands, got to watch it a little bit. And anyway, I feel like, I should be interviewing you, but I'm really grateful to be here and to join you on this podcast.
Thanks for being on. And I think you're the most successful Alta Hawk High School alumni.
No.
For sure. So we're just going to lead with that premise.
Definitely not.
And quick background on Jeff Handy. I think from a really early age, as long as I've known you, we knew each other even before high school. You've always been somebody whose actions were aligned with their value stack. And I feel like that's a definition of character. And I think everyone has seen you as that. I've shared this story with you, but to share it on the podcast, we did this thing in basketball where we go around and we'd shoot free throws, and we shoot threes, and then we shoot jump shots and shoot layups, and then we'd record. We'd go and self-record and tell the coach what we got that day, all summer, all camp long. And then at the end, there's a prize. And you won the, I think the free throw shooting prize. And someone turned to me and said, well, we all know that he actually won because Jeff's the most honest kid out here. And I've always seen you as that. It's just so like stable, steady Eddie. Maybe you have some internal demons that none of the rest of us see, but just super, super high quality and high character. You've gone on to start multiple companies. Seva is a company with a high school friend. I feel like that also talks about the character that you had then and has continued now that you're still able to work closely and have deep relationships with people that you were friends with in high school. So you and Peter grew Seva, you exited that, and now you have Quality, and it is AI QA for developers and for businesses. And that that's so cool. I'm so pumped for what you guys are doing. You have some big things lined up. We probably won't announce everything that's lined up that's happening with you guys. But so stoked for what you guys are creating. So I want to go back a little bit. I remember you texting me, hey, Court, we're creating this new app, or hey, we're creating this new app. Is probably a mass text for getting basketball players together. Could we just go back? Like, was that your first entrepreneurial venture, or was there stuff before that?
Well, I'm just amazed that you remember. Yeah. So I think I'd always been entrepreneurial without knowing I was entrepreneurial, whether it was setting up, to run setting up a 5K in student government, or, setting the world record for the world's largest cardboard fort, also in high school, like just kind of doing these little projects.
You have the world record for the largest cardboard fort?
We had it. We've done it twice. And we've since been eclipsed, unfortunately.
Measured by square feet or volume or
by number of boxes. And so there's a few things that are a little bit wrong with it. I think that measuring square footage is a healthy metric, and certainly if that was the case, then we would still have the record. But it is number of boxes. Yeah, and but I never really thought of those things as entrepreneurial. They just seemed fun. And when I was in college, I got together with a friend, and we had this idea to just do a pickup basketball app called Blacktop. And it was awesome. When it came out, I mean, we had a bunch of users. Jimmer Fredette joined was kind of an advisor for our business, which was super neat. We had Darren Williams and Ronnie Price repping all of our gear. We got 10,000 Instagram followers in like 3 days. It was like, wow. It was a really fun time. Unfortunately, internal issues and some funding issues wound up killing the idea a little premature. And if I had had more experience, I would have found ways to easily navigate those issues. At the time, these seemed very insurmountable. And so we wound up, pausing on the idea. But it was a really fun early entry into entrepreneurship where I got to learn a lot. I lost all my savings in that business, which I think was really good for me. I think it was really good for me to kind of feel, the consequence of even though it wasn't very much money, but, relatively speaking, it was a lot. And I think that was a really good experience for me. I mean, we launched that business. I bought my first house and we had our first child all that, week. And it was really a good growing experience, but then it really led me to do other things in business, because it was at the heels of that I had Peter, my brother and Peter, call me about starting Seva, and we went from there. But yeah, it was a really fun business. And in fact, about a year ago, I showed up to play basketball at a place, and I don't really go play very much anymore. But
tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock, we're playing. By the way,
oh, that sounds really fun, actually. I went and I was playing and I was wearing a blacktop shirt, and somebody came over and they said, "Oh my gosh, a blacktop, dude, whatever happened to that app?" And they didn't know who I was, and they're like, "Whatever happened to that thing?" I'm like, "I don't know," but he just was going on telling me all of these things about how he had a great experience using the app. And so anyway, even all these years later, it was interesting that people still remembered it. But while it was a blip in kind of my entrepreneurial journey, it was a really good. It was good to help me define, especially like who I want to work with and who I can work with. To make it an idea a reality. So.
Love it, dude. One thing that came to mind as you were talking is you have Jimmer Fredette, Darren Williams, and always just played. You set the world record. You've always played big. Can you talk about, is that a choice? Is that just how you're naturally wired?
Well, I really appreciate you saying that. I think, I think sometimes it's hard to see those as necessarily big things when they happen to you. I think that you just kind of see it all as just kind of life. I think for me, I think I probably gauge my own success by just my own happiness level. Like I truly am happy. I really, really like my life, and all of those things have been a part of my life. So I kind of just appreciate them for all they are. I think in business, like I haven't ever had like a real destination, like as far as like where I'm going. I think a lot of people when they talk about entrepreneurship, they talk about it sometimes maybe as like a war, where you're gearing up and you're engaging in combat, and there's maybe only so much of a particular field, and you need to get it. And I think that works. That analogy works much better for public companies. But really, like the analogy that I like for entrepreneurship life is much more as like one of those old school expeditions. Like you can think of maybe like Lewis and Clark. They have a specific destination in mind. They're on the East Coast and they want to go all the way and see the Pacific Ocean. They want to map out, their journey. So they have limited resources. They have a small team, and they need to be nimble and flexible in order to make this goal. But they're mapping it out as they go. There's been nobody that's gone before them. There's no playbook. And they need to carry out this expedition. Well, like that, not very romantic early exploration, idea. I've always had that inside of me and always wanted that, but there's no expeditions really that you can have on Earth currently, unless it's like underneath the ocean or up in space. And so for me though, entrepreneurship and taking is kind of like the modern equivalent of exploration, where you're doing something that nobody's ever done before. You're paving a certain pathway that nobody's ever walked. And as a result of that, like you are creating your own playbook. And while there may be books and other things that can infer about your situation and maybe you can take principles from, you're the ultimate, guide on this journey. And so I think, so for me, as I look at my own career, it's just like kind of this expedition, this ever ongoing, and maybe we've had some mountains and some valleys, but I think I just kind of look at it all as kind of more of a beautiful picture, if that makes sense. So.
Love it. Tell me about your first company with Peter and your brother.
Yeah, so Seva, it started out, Peter had gone to Nepal with his family. Nepal had a crazy earthquake in 2015, and they went there to help rebuild the country, not the whole country. They went to go rebuild a hospital. And while they were out there, Peter noticed that a lot of the graduates there had a lot of knowledge in technology. And and they have that because each high schooler in Nepal graduates knowing C++. And Peter saw this, kind of cataloged it away. He was talking with his dad. How can we help these people? And I think one of the outcroppings of that was a social venture that would connect Nepali developers to jobs here in the States. And what that eventually morphed into was Seva Development, which was we take really talented technical developers in Nepal that don't have the opportunity and then have them work on quality assurance projects here. So unlike like an outsourced dev shop, we were like an outsourced QA shop. And QA, I think, works a lot better for outsourcing because there can be a natural segmentation, even though it's always better if they're more integrated, but like there can be a segmentation between like testing and development. For example, a group of developers has, developed something throughout the day, they pass it over to our team, and then they test it at night, and then in the morning, the developers see the results. I think where the world has gotten a lot more agile, that type of process has gotten less and less relevant. But certainly, years ago when we started this business, that was how things were done. And we fit in really well in that our first couple of customers was, Vivint and a healthcare company called Silverview and Chatbooks. Those were our first, core group of companies. And I mean, we had a lot of ups and downs throughout the whole business. I didn't make, more than $40,000 for a long, long time, but we just kept going, and we really felt like we were making a difference, and that was really fun. It was fun to spend our 20s going around the world and setting up offices and experiencing other cultures and doing international business. We eventually got to be the lead testers for the Microsoft Edge browser, which was
here you are playing big again.
It was a really great experience to do that, and it certainly opened up a lot of doors. So we bootstrapped that business essentially, and to where we eventually found a strategic acquirer as we then started. We saw the market moving. I mean, QA really sits at this intersection of repeatable processes and a lot of data, and AI works super well in the middle of that Venn diagram. And we saw a good opportunity to use AI even back in 2021 in quality assurance. We were a little early in a lot of respects because we started out making our own models, but Seva at its peak, we had about 150 employees. We had, people all over the world, and I still, even yesterday, I was talking with one of my good friends from Nepal, and I'm grateful for the relationships that I've had there and with that country specifically. And yeah, it was a great adventure, and I'm really grateful for it.
As you were talking about this and also Blacktop and kind of finding this adventure and Lewis and Clark, I had this thought come through my mind of I love Lord of the Rings, by the way. You're nodding your head. Okay,
of course.
So you're gonna nerd out.
I mean, I'm a human,
So I've had the question, and I get asked all the time, like, if my kid wants to, I was on a plane flying out, and they said, my son's going to the University of Utah. He's coming from California because U has a great entrepreneurial program. Utah's very entrepreneurial. Like, how does he get started? What's his advice? Like, what company should he start? And what goes through my mind when somebody's going through that process is Bilbo just smoking his pipe in his little hobbit hole, and then all of a sudden this wizard shows up and says, "Have I got a quest for you?" And I feel like entrepreneurship is often the same. That's how it was for me. I got a call from a childhood mentor while I was living my life doing door-to-door sales, and he called me up and said, "Hey, Corey, I've been following your story. We know each other well, been a mentor, and I'm starting a business and would like you to be involved." And I think a lot of people go through this process of like trying to force and fit it in. Like, Lewis and Clark didn't force. It's like, hey, we just want to go to this other side, but how do we be as prepared as possible and make ourselves as knowledgeable as possible so that when that calling comes, I can jump in with both feet and make it the right thing. You're nodding your head a lot. I'm curious your thoughts.
No, here. I mean, no, you just, yes. If I mean, it's a call to adventure, but at some point you need to put yourself in a position, right, to take advantage of the opportunity that presents itself. I mean, like, you can make your own luck, you can force things, but I would say has a much lower likelihood of success if you try and blunt force your way into success. I think what you need to do is to try and keep yourself as open as possible, as connected as possible, as into an industry as possible. And then that's where the insights and where the call can come. And even if it might not be the Gandalf that's coming, it can be the mentor or that brilliant idea or whatever. No, I couldn't agree more.
Can you walk me through that transition? Clayton Christensen talks about something called an emergent strategy and a deliberate strategy. And the emergent strategy is, if you're a colony of ants and there's a sandwich that your colony is going to bring back to the queen, you're in a line. You're going as fast as you can. You're bringing it back and telling all the other ants. That's the deliberate strategy. The emergent strategy is that one ant that is just crawling around on the rocks that like 1/1000th of the time gets stepped on, but another 1/1000th of the time finds a steak that got thrown away and then starts bringing that back to the colony. And both of those are necessary, but not at the same, like, how do you know if you should, from a personal perspective and from a business perspective, be executing a deliberate strategy or an emergent strategy?
Well, I wish I was that analytical, that I thought of my life. So, like that I think about those premeditatively. I don't, I unfortunately, I'm a very simple person. And I think you just kind of know. I mean, I really do. I think that so much in our life is just that intuition. And the people that I found that have the most regret have been those that ignored their intuition, where they really knew that they needed to be handling a situation a certain way, and yet they went contrary to it. So, I mean, it's kind of a lame thing. I don't know how much I think in those really stark terms. But
I heard a quote today as I was
talking
with, right before you walked in, I was talking with a business coach from 4 years ago. We were just catching up. And I asked her a question like, do I go this direction or this direction? And she said, follow the energy. And I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, what gives me energy? Like, there it is.
I mean, great advice. That's great advice. I love it. No, I love that.
So tell me about the exit of Seva.
Yeah, it was actually, weirdly enough, my next door neighbor in my area. He wound up moving, but he was looking at getting into this space. He'd been cobbling together quite a few companies kind of in a private equity type of thing that he was forming, and he saw Seva being a potential complementary business. He had been associated with the company. He's a very successful entrepreneur, also in our space. A little bit of a different take, and so yeah, we wound up selling the company to him, and it's just been off and going, and hopefully going well.
It seems smooth, right? You have Peter goes to Nepal, helps build a hospital, has this $1 million idea. You guys have 150 employees, and you sell it, and off to the next thing. So just so that the audience isn't mired in disillusion of how easy this was, would you mind sharing one of your fetal position in the shower moments that may have occurred when building up Seva?
Yeah, which one? It's we lost, things were going, oh man, it's so hard to even choose which one. There's just so many. Two experiences, maybe because the metaphor that you just gave, because they both required that kind of feeble, pleading, to where everything just seemed totally out of your hands. The first one was, it was actually when Vivint canceled on us. They were our biggest customer at the time, and they wound up canceling, and that caused a whole big organization shift. We had pre-hired too much, and we didn't realize it, and we didn't want to let people go. Here we are doing this social venture. It was antithetical to everything and all the reasons why we started this business to not do that, or to keep going, or to not let these people go. But no matter how many cuts on our salaries or on whatever that we could do, we realized that it was inevitable. And so we had a huge layoff, the only layoff that we ever had at Seva, even through COVID, everything. We never had one, but this is my first time going through it. And, and I'm young and I'm looking at these people and, we're having to let them go. And kudos to a lot of the people in Nepal, because we had to do that here because we didn't have enough money to fly over to do it in person, And so kudos to a lot of those people. But that to me was just so hard, because I had felt for the first time what it felt like to fail other people and to fail their livelihoods. Here these people they finally have the opportunity of a lifetime, the thing that's going to take them out of making $3 a day. And they're so excited and they have so much momentum. And then to just see the hope being torn away, as we're letting these people go, because especially at the time, we were one of the largest employers, technology employers in all of Nepal. And we were really small. We had 60 people or something. I think that experience was just really, really hard for others. One experience that was really tough for me was I had gone out to Nepal and I got food poisoning from a cow brain dish that I had eaten. And I remember I was just so sick, and I happened to not be in Kathmandu. I was out in Pokhara, a beautiful city, but doesn't have a lot of medical infrastructure. And I remember it was nearing Christmas, and I needed to get home, but I was delayed. I stayed there an extra week because I was so sick. And I do remember literally being just like thinking, oh my gosh, this company's going to cost me my life. I'm out here and I'm going to, in fact, I was so dramatic about it that I even like turned my bed towards the Himalayas. It's beautiful. The Annapurna mountain range is right there. And I just laid there thinking that I was going to pass away, because all there was Bollywood, which nothing against Bollywood, but it just wasn't what I needed at that moment. And I just remember being like, man, this is it. But I just remember that thinking like, kind of what am I willing to like risk for my business? Which, I mean, it sounds so dramatic, right? It totally is. But at the moment it seemed very logical. It's like, oh man, like, am I willing to give it all for the business? Because here I am, feeling like I'm giving it all. But, I think those moments were tough. We had one at Quality where, that was super difficult. I mean, everything is just seems like it's hard, and it just never stops. But, certainly whenever you have to go and raise capital for your company, as opposed to the bootstrap business, which was Seva, to now, the tech startup of Quality, that was really difficult too. We had a string of safes, we had a string of, things before, and it was just kind of like, it felt like every single payroll period, it was like we were missing, we were just about to miss it. And then we got more funding or another customer or something. And, I remember hearing these stories of people that, it's like, oh man, it was 2 weeks before payroll. And then we had this miracle, or the week before payroll. And it's like, man, we went past payroll, and it just so happened that it was a 3-day weekend, so that our employees didn't feel the stress of that. But, like those moments are really hard. I still remember being in my house and I was looking out in my backyard. And I just had kind of zoned out. And I just thought, oh my gosh, this is it. This is the end of the road. Quality's gone. Quality's dead. It's gone. 30 minutes later, I had an email that said, yeah, we're willing to invest in your business. Oh my gosh, we're alive again. It was just this interesting thing, where these near-death experiences. And for me, I think that I unhealthily attach a little bit more of my self-worth to the way that my company's going, especially earlier on in my life. And so you almost feel like you're dying, which again is dramatic, but when you're in it, it feels real.
So, with all those fetal position in the shower moments, you said you were really happy. I'm curious if you could just talk to that for a second. You have so many hard things and you're also extremely happy. I think people would see those as mutually exclusive.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, I think, my dad, when I was younger, he just said, hey, like, the thing that's going to make up 95% of your happiness is, who you marry, what you do, and where you live. And I think I would probably just like add also like, what you believe and some of these other, there may be a couple of other things, like how you take care of your body, I think is also probably another big indicator. But I've just had that in mind. And I think, I do think that having really hard times does create a pretty good contrast to light times too. So I think that, I think it's just like the intensity of living, I think has helped kind of show the beauty of life and help give me a little bit more gratitude for it. Not like anything that I've ever gone through has been so hard as what other people have been through, in their life. I haven't had to fight a war, or anything like that. But I just think that I think also remembering that all of these things are essentially self-inflicted, like I started the business, my wife and I chose to have a family. Like these are choices that I made, and they're good choices, and owning them and not feeling like things happen to me, but rather, things happen for me, I think it's been helpful, but more than anything, I just think that like, I really love my family. I love where I live. I love what I do. And that's just so great. I think as humans, we're just constantly conditioned to hate the thing that we're currently doing, which is why so many people feel angst. The only antidote to that, of course, is gratitude. But I think that like, I just really like what I do. I like who I work with. Peter and my brother are people I've worked with now for so long, 8 years. And I just find a lot of joy in the work that we do. So I don't know. And, happiness is, at the end of the day, is just a choice, just like anything else that we do. There's external factors that can, influence that to some degree. But overall, it's a good life. I definitely don't think that I have everything figured out or anything or can articulate it perfectly. But just, as I look inwardly, I'm just grateful, I think, to just live this beautiful life. I do think that we as humans are most happy when we are creating something. I don't think that necessarily needs to manifest in creating a business for everybody. But if you have an outlet for creating, maybe that's creating family memories. Maybe, it's creating a new relationship. But if we're constantly creating in life, I think that that's beautiful. And I think that the only thing that I have a lot of in this life is opportunities to create. And I think that provides a certain level of happiness.
So you're so grounded. You reminded me of a Viktor Frankl quote, which in Man's Search for Meaning talks about there's 3 ways to experience joy. You can create or enjoy creation or suffer bravely. And
wow,
he's summed it up well. And you are doing all 3. You're creating, you're enjoying creation, and the way you've described the suffering was to say, hey, this is self-inflicted. This is the path I've chosen. This is happening for me, which I would define as suffering bravely. Do you have any habits or anti-habits, things that you avoid or don't do to curate this type of mentality for you?
Likewise, like most people, I think that I'm constantly trying to iterate on how do I achieve optimum performance? And I think, so it's an ever growing thing. And as far as
like 1% of the population,
right?
Not like most people.
Yeah. Well, no, I do think that a habit I have gotten into is just being comfortable and trying to always make myself more uncomfortable. I don't know, today, there are people, I think that just the more you're able to push that boundary, I don't wake up necessarily at the same time every day, or, I try to, I don't have the exact type of day, like my in-laws, they have the exact time, they have the exact life. Every single day is the exact same for them. They wake up, they go to work, they work across the office from one another, they have lunch, they come home, they make dinner together, and then they eat ice cream and fall asleep watching a show, Blue Bloods on whatever, and then they go to bed. Like, that is their every single day. That's not how mine is. Mine's much more dynamic. But I don't know, as far as habits, I do think one habit that I've had throughout my whole life is that I at least try and take 1 to 2 people to lunch every single week. Every single week. I've done that pretty much since I landed in college. That first week, I've done it every single week of my life, pretty much, unless I'm on vacation, and I'm not with other people. And that's been really good for me, just being able to meet and to, you don't go to lunch with, I was at lunch today, with somebody, and I just want to learn more about what they do and to see them. And I just think it's good. I think it's good to get out there and to, meet with people and to have a lot of inputs for how other people live their life. And maybe you get enough inputs and you can create a standard distribution for maybe how you'd like to live yours. So.
Tell me about the next few years at Quality.
It's a dynamic time in our space. AI is making competition a lot more relevant than it was before. Quality is going to do some amazing things because we are first. We're going to be the first ones to get into mobile. We're going to be the first ones to get into API. We're going to be the first ones to get into backend and monitoring. We're going to do some really special things. I could see a couple different outcomes for Quality in the next couple of years. Either one, as we double down on these different technologies, we find something that maybe has created an inflection point to the business where we could really see a powerful pathway to further funding to other things. There could be a partnership or M&A opportunities for Quality. I think right now we're looking and we're cognizant that every choice that we're making strategically may land us in one of those different outcomes. And so we're just trying to position Quality to be the best at AI and testing, and I think that really good things will happen. But from a product perspective, we have a really powerful product roadmap. I think from a leadership perspective, we're all pretty aligned on where the company's going and where we want it to go. But I mean, even yesterday, right, when it seems like every single day there's just a new announcement that's relevant in our space that can make our product either better or, have competition come in even, it keeps lowering the barrier to entry. So I do think that the next couple of years are going to be ones of big time growth for Quality. And I could see us in a couple of years really knowing where our outcome will probably be.
You guys raised how much? Can you share or no?
Yeah. So we've raised $8 million, and we have some venture debt, and we have some investment from, the founders via Seva and some things. So, we're probably all in just over 10 million probably.
Okay. So you have $10 million of investment. Looking back, I'm wondering if you would have done anything different than what you did with that money, or if you would have done everything exactly the same. Well,
I think, the biggest thing that has, hurt us has just been speed of getting things out, speed of, product development. I think that's always been a bit of an issue. I think that if we would have had a little bit more courage to make jumps a little earlier, as we've seen, for example, we used to build all of our own models for Quality. That was before ChatGPT. We used to build all of our own stuff, and this was still when we were in product development. Well, then ChatGPT came out, and a myriad of other, we use, 8 different models at different parts of our application. We're much more of an infrastructure company than actual AI. We're not creating AI, but we are using AI as a part of infrastructure that can do some really special things for your business. But that whole thing meant that we pretty much had to take everything that we built and just throw it away. And I think, that was tough. And initially it was like, no, we don't need to just throw it away, And so I think that some of those bumps in the road as technology has progressed at a rate that I don't think that any of us internally at Quality had anticipated. I wish we would have just moved a lot faster because we could have had a product out a lot earlier. Instead, it just took way too long,
What's the advice that you give? Because I hear opposite side of the coin of, hey, we raised a bunch of capital, hired a bunch of people, tried to do a bunch of sales, realized we were premature to product market fit, and I wish we had all of that cash instead of spending it. You're saying I wish we would have been more bold in our product bets, is what I'm hearing you say. How do you find that sweet spot?
Good question. I certainly don't have all the answers to that, but that's a good question. One that I think if I could answer, we would be even further. I do think that people talk a lot about, getting your product in the hands of customers, and I think that all of that is really, really great. But you also need to have a good product. So I think that the balance would be can they actually use it? And I think that for ours, it's such a heavily technically complex product that we couldn't get it in its final form, or in a usable form, without a whole lot of development efforts to even get to an MVP. Like we needed to do a lot to get to MVP. It wasn't just a reskinning of something that's been done. It wasn't a CRM. It wasn't a texting platform. It wasn't something that had a lot of precedent to it. And as a result, we had to go through a lot of product development for even people to use it. So how to overcome that? I think that if we would have just been more bold, we could have gotten in the hands of customers earlier, and that would have been, I think that would have been better. So bottom line is, like, I think that you just really got to have a good product, and you need to get that good product in the hand of other people. So instead of like having a crappy product and giving it to customers and then getting feedback, or just taking way too long to have the perfect product, there's somewhere in there where you have to have a really good product. Not a perfect product, but a really good product, and then get it in the hands of customers. But that's hard. It's a hard balance.
If you had to spend $10 million at quality in the next 6 months, how would you spend it?
Marketing and sales. That's it.
Marketing and sales.
With the exception of one thing. So if you ask me, it's different. If you ask Peter, it's different. He would also say Peter would spend it on the product. I think that he and I have that kind of balance where it's like, hey, Peter believes that the product will sell itself, and to some extent that's totally true. And then I also want to have a more traditional sales motion because we are B2B. And I think that there's still some really good things there. So it's a balance. I think that if we did have 10 million, a portion of that would be going into sales and marketing, and a portion of that would be going into building out mobile and API and backend.
Fast forward 2, 3, 4 years in the future, whatever that is, whatever the exit is. You guys IPO, or you sell, or you're just cash flowing like crazy. What's next?
My very first job, kind of coming out of school. So, we had Blacktop, and then there was a little bit of gray area in between that. And I had worked at this firm while I was in college, but I had worked at a small family office helping to manage their fund. And I really enjoyed that. It was really, really fun. I could see myself either raising a fund or doing a fund with internal capital, family office type of thing. I think that there's a lot of really good work to do. I think, I don't think that it would be just as much investment as it could also be, venture, maybe starting a couple things internally. I don't really know exactly what it looks like, but I know the types of problems I'd like to solve next. I think that there is a lot of great opportunities in space and robotics that I don't know a lot of, but Peter knows a lot about. And, that I think would be really interesting to one day start looking into, and to see how we could make our own contribution to some of the exciting technical changes that's going to revolutionize the world. It would be fun to be, in a small way, a part of the next tech revolution that's going to come. So I think that the next tech revolution is going to be one of those things that's going to set a base floor for all humanity, for how all humanity lives. At some point, all humanity can have basic services, or all, a basic standard of living, or, some of these different things. And that'd just be such a fun thing to be a part of and to dedicate, a part of my professional life to. But on the other side, I never want to take on too much to where I can't, be the best husband and father that I can. So there's always going to be a bit of a balance. I do think that as my kids start getting older and into high school, whether it's coaching or, something, being very involved in their life, I think that more of those opportunities will come up that will take some time. So good balance of those two things.
Okay, I have 2 more questions and we're going to wrap. This has been so enlightening for me, Jeff, and so fun to just see everything that you've done since
well, you're amazing. You're really good at this. So,
you are a leader in your church. You're a bishop. And you're an entrepreneur, venture-backed entrepreneur, which is different. There's stresses from bootstrapping as well. The perceived stresses that I see from VC is there's only one route. There's not really a choice to, let's pull back for a second, reevaluate. You go and you make this. I don't know if that's accurate.
It is.
Yeah. You have 5 kids, ages 8 to 1. You have a wife. And I'm sure there are unseen things of parents' needs, siblings' needs, getting called up, people in Nepal that you have relationships with. Where do you derive your energy from?
Well, great question. I think there is a natural part of I do feel like I have a natural energy, like, which is a blessing, and I'm grateful for it. But more than anything, I just love whatever I do. Like, I love what I do, and so it gives me the energy to get up and do it,
Is that a choice? Or have you always loved it? Because you love playing basketball, you love soccer, you loved everything.
I don't know, it's like that quote, right? Whatever thou art, act well thy part. It's just like, whatever you are currently doing, just try and make it the best thing ever. But just with whatever, it's just being excited to go and do it. And I do think to some extent it is a choice. Like it is hard, to sometimes think of, oh my gosh, I have to do, X, Y, and Z. Like, for example, I a couple weeks ago I was out with the military, and we were out in the mountains, and it's freezing, and it's 2 a.m, and it was, the wind was blowing really hard, and what we were doing is we were doing some simulated patrols. So there was a bunch of people rolling around just trying to find us or whatever. And I just I took a knee, which was rough because it was so cold and made me all wet. But I'd like taken a knee, and I was looking up at the moon, and there's this pack of coyotes that had kind of just been kind of pacing us in and pacing us out and everything, and they were all yapping. And I just kind of looked around and like, what in the world am I doing? Where am I? What is happening? It's interesting where life has taken me to be on this hilltop at 2 a.m. with these great, soldiers. And I had this moment where at first I was like, what am I doing? Like almost pessimistically. And then I had to like turn it and be like, no, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? This is so cool, because I did kind of, there is this moment where you kind of have a little bit of a bad attitude about kind of being out there. But then, just trying to, the speed to flip that. And maybe to some extent, yeah, you're totally lying to yourself, but like, oh, well, if it makes it, I do think that to some extent, like, I mean, it helps me anyway. Like I can just kind of make that switch. But as far as energy goes, I just, I think it does derive from just wanting to do it. I want to do these things. I want to go to my kids' thing. I want to go to work every day. I want to go visit somebody who needs me. I want to show up for the military, like I want to do those things. And so I just do them.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, last question. If you were, instead of sitting next to me, sitting across from younger version of yourself, what version of yourself would you pick, and what would you say?
Always tough, because there's a part of me that wouldn't want to say anything. Mainly because like I'm right where I want to be, and I wouldn't want to mess him up. I think I just want him to do exactly whatever he's about to do. And, sometimes I think, like my first thought about that was, hey man, like don't worry so much. But it's like, I worried so much, and maybe that was the difference, so maybe I'm grateful that I worried so much, or, like I don't know if any of the suffering that I had wasn't for its good. And maybe some of the suffering that I thought was pointless, maybe somewhere it was meant for something. So I wouldn't want to relieve that from him. Like clearly I would love for him to have been more successful than I am now. I don't know if that's realistic, unless I like told him about some sort of secret investment that he could make, or buying, more Bitcoin in 2016 when I did. And, I don't know what else, but then even then, I don't know if I would have had the number of kids I would have had, or if I would have done X, Y, and Z. So, it's so hard. I honestly just think that I would just tell him I loved him and I'd walk out.
Okay, let me flip the question then. Channel your 10 years from now, future Jeff. He's sitting across from you.
Holy cow.
He gets to say one thing to you. What do you think he says?
Oh my gosh. What a good question. Oh, I've never been asked this. Well, what I hope that he says is that, hey buddy, like you're on the right track. Just keep doing whatever you're doing, and you're going to get to where you want to be, just keep going. Just don't, I would hope that would be something, or I suppose if he like got up and walked away, maybe then that means that, I got to wherever I would wanted to go. But, I don't know what he'd say, but I think more than anything, I think that if there was anything that he were to say, I would hope that it would be around my kids. Maybe that if there was something that I could watch out for, any advice parenting wise in a very dynamic world that we live in and raising children, I think any insight from a future self, I think would be probably really helpful. but I would hope that he would just recognize that this 34-year-old Jeff is on the journey that's made 44-year-old Jeff. And, I do think, so advice is always really hard, right? Like, because it's so skewed, like you're always getting, like I've asked, hundreds and thousands of people their advice, and it's always valuable, but it's always valuable in the context of a lot of things. You never want to over-index somebody's advice because, maybe it's just not relevant to you. They were dealing with different circumstances and different things, and now they're benefiting from hindsight and time. And so, there's just so much when it comes to advice that can be misconstrued. And so, I hope that my future self would also recognize that whatever advice he would give. Anyway, this is horrible. What a horrible answer. More than anything, I would just hope that he would just say, hey, buddy, like, keep going. Just you're on the right path, keep going. And that if I happen to not be on the right path, hopefully you can give me some sort of insight to put me back on it. Yeah. How's that for the lamest answer ever?
I love that answer. It's identical to mine. Carlos has asked me that question before, and just said, the process works. You just keep going. Like, the process works. Perfect.
And if my answer can be the same as yours, then it's probably the right one. So,
Jeff, this has been amazing, man.
Oh, you're amazing.
Anything you wish I would have asked that we didn't touch on?
Oh, no. I just, I need to hear your story. That's what I need to hear. You're amazing. What you guys are doing here is wonderful and highlighting, founders and entrepreneurs. And I just hope that, if anything, to anyone listening, I think the most important thing is that life is beautiful and is meant to be lived to its fullest. And I just hope that whatever manifestation that is for you, that you can achieve that, because it's a really nice thing. So thank you for having me here.
Jeff, this has been awesome. It's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
Thanks, brother.